right, I think we're starting up here. Welcome to Shift Happens, presented by GoTab, Pour My Beer, and Schedulefly. Thanks for everyone attending today. And as a reminder, the session is being recorded, and we will be accepting questions throughout. So please make sure to throw those in the chat as they come to mind. We will address them and as many of them as we possibly can throughout the session here. First things first, let me thank our presenting sponsors and partners with GoTab partners. First and foremost, Schedulefly and PourMyBeer. Schedulefly provides extremely easy staffing, scheduling, and communications with legendary customer service, and they're fully integrated within GoTab as well, so allowing for schedule enforcement and other attributes. So make sure you're taking the time to check them out and sign up for a free 30-day trial if you're not already utilizing them. We'll highly recommend it for all your scheduling needs going through Schedulefly. And then, of course, there's Pour My Beer, providing a self-service beverage technology to a variety of venues while enjoying a very strong integration with GoTab as well. We'll get into the weeds on that as we go throughout the session, of course. And today we are going to speak about the idea and execution of a hybrid service model and extreme optionality on both the operations and from the guest perspective as well, and all the variables that go into that approach. I'm very excited to welcome my two presenters to dive into this conversation with me. First and foremost, let me introduce Rachel Remy from Pour My Beer. Rachel, thank you for joining us. Tell me a little bit about how Pour My Beer and the self-pour technology itself kind of fit in within this hybrid service model that we're going to spend, the next 45 minutes to 60 minutes talking about.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So we have several different solutions within self-pour technology. We have traditional built-in tap rooms, which is what we'll talk about with Connor and Hop and Vine. We also have self-pour stations, which are great for hotels, country clubs, pickleball facilities, outdoor stations. And then we have mobile trailers, which are fantastic for high volume stadiums, concert venues, things like that. So I think that, with all these different solutions, there's a lot of different fit for self-pour, in a hybrid service model. Certainly, the obvious reducing staff and labor and things like that, but also just, helping with the guest experience, moving them through, whether it's in a high volume setting like a stadium, back to their seats, for the show, or the concert, and in a situation with, Hop and Vine, allowing them to just really experience the technology, taste a lot of different options, and just spend more time in the venue.
Great. Yeah. Just the experience of being able to pour your own beers, especially coming from myself personally, being a bartender for many years, working with a lot of different breweries and then operating a lot of different locations of breweries, it gives a completely different experience when I go into a place now as a guest. And I'm like, oh, great. I get to, utilize the skills that I've learned of how to pour a beer properly, and how to, pick and choose what I want throughout the course of my experience. But it's also nice that most locations that I've been to utilize some kind of, tap ambassador or some sort. So there you still have the added use of having somebody there to kind of teach you what you're doing. Not everybody comes in through it with the experience of ever pouring a beer in the first place. So we'll get into a lot more of that model as we move along. I probably should have introduced myself a little bit as well. For those who haven't seen, I great little 1 minute short videos on the GoTab channel. My name is Adam Howe. I am a solutions engineer with GoTab. Been in the food and beverage industry in varying capacities since '96. Flipping burgers at a select fast food restaurant chain that I will leave nameless at the moment. Moving all the way up to bartending, supervising, managing, and then operating multi-locations, spending a lot of my time in the craft brewing industry as well. managing locations from Boston to Oakland to Indianapolis, where I currently reside as well. But that is not to say that I am bringing all the experience, the operating experience to this conversation. That goes to our next presenter, Connor Rasmussen, who's a co-owner operator of Hop and Vine Taproom in Stamford, Connecticut. Connor, tell me and everybody listening a little bit more about Hop and Vine and what you guys got going on in Connecticut.
Yeah, absolutely. So Hop and Vine is a two-floor, 69 tap, 5,500 square foot self-pour beer and wine tap room. It's a very unique tap room to the area. We're one of the first places to kind of come into Connecticut. Um, this sort of model allows people to come in, sample different beers, pay by the ounce. We have this very cool sort of brewery, beer garden-esque vibe to it there. People are allowed to move themselves freely throughout the space. We've got couches, coffee tables, high top tables. We do big projection TVs, some darts, shuffleboard games, all that kind of stuff, on top of having a full bar there as well.
Yeah, it's great. And you guys came in to be, I think we talked about it off air right before this in January. So you guys have been operating for, a few months now. How has the overall attraction to your local area been to what you guys are able to present? Because you're presenting something that is very different than, as you mentioned, like it's one of the first innovative type of places in your area, never mind in the whole state of Connecticut. How has that been received?
I think we've been very well received. Connecticut has such a massive craft beer scene. There's a ton of breweries throughout the state of Connecticut. Everybody is very interested in sort of sampling different beers, trying different offerings, seeing what else is out there besides just sort of the prototypical big names in the beer industry. And so we really focus on a lot of Connecticut craft beer. I would say we do 44 beers on tap. We do 16 wines, 9 non-alcoholics between kombucha, coffee, some mocktails, stuff like that. And pretty much every single one of our beers are all Connecticut craft beer. So we are really sort of focused on trying to showcase all of that local flavor, all that local hard work that these guys are putting in, and kind of share it to the masses. I think everybody has received us very well. It's a new concept for everybody, from staff, from patrons, across the board, and I think everybody's kind of enjoying it for the first couple months here so far.
Yeah, I love, I mean, as somebody who grew up in Western Massachusetts, really close to Connecticut, I really appreciate the idea of being able to kind of focus in on your local providers of what you're really focused on, which obviously is that beer. You have plenty of wines on tap as well. Um, Talk to me about why you chose to present especially the beers in the way that you did, utilizing the self-pour technology through Pour My Beer. And then was it more of a operational decision, or was it more of a experience decision for what you wanted to provide to your guests?
Yeah, so the whole concept of Hop and Vine started when one of my partners, Zach, had gone out to the West Coast and saw one of these locations out there and immediately sort of fell in love. And I think right from the get-go, we knew that this sort of self-pour technology, and being integrated into the bar scene was something we really wanted to do. We love to sample different things. We, frequent breweries on weekends and sort of try to rush out to grab the new IPA launching or the new sour launching here and there. And so the idea of putting this model in here where patrons and guests can pay by the ounce and sample different things, create their own beer flights, create their own wine flights, without having to commit to a full pint. I think is huge and a lot of fun for people. They're able to sort of sample different types of beers that they've never heard of before, on a similar style aspect of things, and even from a wine perspective, same idea as well, right? If you say, "Oh, I love Sauvignon Blanc, but I'm only very familiar with New Zealand style Sauvignon Blanc," you have the ability to have two or three different styles in here and maybe sort of expand your taste palette a little bit more. And then maybe hopefully translates into you attending that brewery on a weekend down the road, or you going into that liquor store and sort of recognizing the label that's on the screens there behind me and sort of saying like, "Oh yeah, I tried that place. I tried that beer at Hop and Vine. Let me go grab a 4-pack of beers," and sort of, pay it forward from that point.
That, I mean, that's my favorite part is honestly is being able to not only pay it forward, but also just creating the sense of community where it's like you're not only supporting those breweries, those local breweries by purchasing their kegs and putting them on tap and selling their products, but you're also providing an experience that's now guests are associating with that beer. And now when they go off and see that label, they're associating the experience that they had at Hop and Vine to that product, whether they know it or not. It was something, I worked really hard when I was managing specific breweries and brew pubs, knowing that the attention to detail that you provided for the experience to your guests in location would automatically be associated with that brand. And so you're able to do that through the use of displays of all the different beers and all the different beers you have on tap through this experience to now touch would you 44 breweries at any time if you have 44 different brands on tap. So that's really impactful. Rachel, talk to me a little bit about how the products themselves get displayed through a Pour My Beer experience or through a self pour experience for that matter, versus having going up to the bar and conversing with an actual person when at a bar where maybe a bartender's obviously with a full bar experience, they've got a lot of things going on in their minds, as opposed to a self pour situation where you're really focused in on one particular thing.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, to Connor's point, everything is, by the ounce or portion mode. You have the option to charge guests, by the ounce for everything, or you could do a portion mode where they either had a half glass or a full glass. So I think at that aspect, to Connor's point, is a great for tasting, right? Like they don't have to commit to anything that they've never had before. Maybe there's a non-alcoholic kombucha. They've always been curious about kombucha. They've never tried it. Now they can taste it and they're not committing to paying, for a full glass. So I think that automatically opens up people to trying new things and tasting more because they don't have to commit to a full product. We also integrate with a company called Untapped. So Untapped displays on all of the screens, and it's fantastic because you can do tasting notes on the product. You could write your own notes. So if you did a caked cocktail on your own, you could write a description. You could put, a different picture up, or you could utilize Untapped's database to kind of tap into their tasting notes, their ABV, their style. So guests, it's very interactive on the screens. They can touch the screens, they can read about the product, read about the beer. If it's local, you can put a little blurb in about, where it's at, where it's from. So I think it really aids in, the interactive experience, and it gives you that personal touch without having a bartender.
Yeah, I mean, that leads us right into the crux of the whole conversation that we're having, this hybrid model of being able to give optionality to your guests about whether it's how to find information about the products that they're purchasing, how to actually make purchases, and then where they're, placing those orders from. So Connor, in Hop and Vine, walk us through the day in the life of a guest that walks in. How are they being attended to, and how are they able to get what they need?
Yeah. So every patron that walks into Hop and Vine is greeted right at the host stand that's there. You present your ID and a credit or debit card that's there. We basically start you a tab, and we give you a small RFID card that looks very similar to like a hotel key card that's there, and that card links to the credit card that's on file. So then you're able to move freely throughout the space. You would take that card and you would walk up to any tap wall that's in there. You can tap your card. To Rachel's point, you can, even before you commit to pouring, you can touch those screens. They'll give you tasting notes. It'll give you the ABV on what's there. And you just tap your card, and it'll unlock the tap that's there so that you can pour, and you pay by the ounce. So you can create your own beer flights, your own wine flights. We always have staff at the tap walls here to sort of give recommendations on different styles of beer, ask people if they've even actually ever poured a beer before. To your point, not everybody is as good as you are over here. So people have never poured beers before. And so when the initial perception of kind of walking up to that tap wall for the first time can be a little daunting. So it's nice to kind of have somebody there to teach people how to pour beers, teach people how to use the tap wall cards, let them sort of explain that the screens themselves are interactive, and you can kind of make your own experience, really.
Yeah, I would say that I think the majority of people out there, their experience in pouring their own beers probably comes in the form of when they were in college and pouring out of a specific type of device. And that's not the same. Let's just put it that way. It's not the same. So it's good that you have somebody there that can at least assist and not take away the experience, I'm sure, but more of like give steps to a proper pour and, a clean pour and all that good stuff. But so people aren't just coming into Hop and Vine for beer and for beer at the at the tap wall. They're also ordering food, and you have other beverage options as well. So talk to me about, I mean, I'm assuming a good majority of people who are coming in are getting more than just, something off the tap wall. So how are they being attended to? Are we utilizing a full service staff to take orders? Are we having them go back up to a counter or go back up? Like talk to me about that experience from the guest perspective.
Yeah, so we put a full bar up on the second floor of the tap room that's here. So if beer and wine is not necessarily your thing, or you're more interested in cocktails, there's a full bar upstairs. There is a designated bartender that is there, and you can utilize your same tap wall card at the bar as well. GoTab is very well integrated with the PourMyBeer system. So basically, everything that you drink that evening or that afternoon is on those tap wall cards that are there. And even that, there's QR codes at the tables. We do a full kitchen. We do a really cool, funky sort of street food from around the world kind of flair that's in here, elevated gastropub bar food. So people can sit down at wherever they like, whether it's couches, whether it's coffee tables, the big high tops that are there. They can use that QR code, scan those QR codes, send an order right to the kitchen. My staff will come and deliver that food for you. And then we constantly have people floating around the tap room, making sure that people are taken care of. If anybody has any questions on anything, it's not like the traditional waiter service, waitress service that are in there. It's sort of a homogenized team that kind of runs around throughout the tap room all together. Whether it's from the people at the tap wall to the food runners to the bartenders to people kind of floating, kind of touching all the tables that are there. Everybody works together to create sort of this amazing experience, almost as if you are throwing a party in your own living room, and you want to make sure that everybody's well taken care of.
We're gonna get a lot more into the weeds into that in just a minute. But Rachel, I wanted to ask you a follow-up question regarding just the what you've seen in your experience, both with Pour My Beer and then just also your experience in the food and beverage industry, is like where does like this kind of model, not only this hybrid service model we're talking about, but this self-service model integrate in the best kind of venues? Do you see people adopting or changing the way that they do things, especially in these models where Pour My Beer is going into, or are they starting off with this in mind, like Connor did?
Yeah, good question. I think it's a little bit of both, right? Like you have, Hop and Vine and Connor, who's kind of starting out with this concept and centering it, a large part of this around the tap wall and the tap experience. I think that he does it very well with a traditional bar. He does cocktails and things there, and then he, sticks to beer and wine at the bar, at the wall, excuse me. So they complement each other, right? They're not competing against each other. The bartenders still have their place behind the bar making cocktails, and the beer wall has its place for beer and wine and, non-alcoholic beverages as well. So I think that he does a really good job of working those two to benefit each other versus, working against each other. But back to your earlier point, yeah, I mean, we've absolutely seen restaurants who have changed their traditional model. They've taken out a bar completely and regutted it with a tap room, or they've added a smaller self pour station, or a wall to include in it. One customer in particular, he has a full restaurant downstairs. Upstairs, he has a small music venue and put a wall up there. So downstairs, you get your traditional, restaurant experience. Upstairs, you can kind of use the wall and stay up there. So I think it can absolutely be done in both settings.
Yeah, I think the fear I think that a lot of people or a lot of operators have is, and I don't want to speak for everybody watching, but I know it would be a fear of mine, especially when I was first starting off, is literally stripping away what and then implementing something completely different than what has been traditional, what people are expecting, not only from an operation standpoint, but also from a guest perspective. People go out to eat, they have a certain idea of what's going to happen. And when they are presented with something different, it can throw them off. And so there's a little bit of a learning curve on both sides, I think, to present what you are trying to get across through that experience at your operation. What I like about that is it really involves your staff to really become part of the experience as well. You don't need to hold everybody's hand per se when you're changing things up or when you're creating a new experience. But being able to direct people into how they can get the most out of the experience in your location, I think goes a long way. And being able to provide a hybrid model where you don't necessarily have dedicated people to dedicated roles allows you a lot more flexibility to present that. And so Connor, you mentioned like you have a whole bunch of staff still. This hybrid model didn't necessarily, get rid of staff. In my opinion, it probably allowed you to just reallocate staff into different ways than what people are used to, I guess, in a traditional model. Um, so how has that been received from your staff? This goes to you guys just opened a couple months ago, so you had to do a full-on onboarding and training and hiring process. And since you are presenting a different model than I think majority of people you hired were used to from any other experience that they might have had, how was that received during the interview process and the retainment process with your staff, with having to adjust to this model that they probably weren't used to?
So, I mean, I would say we probably do run a little bit lighter than what sort of a traditional restaurant or bar would for the space that we are. And when we kind of went through the initial hiring process, the initial sort of onboarding process, it was sort of pitched in that sort of sense of you are there to play host, in your house, in your living room. You're given the flexibility to have conversations with customers, give recommendations on things, sit down and talk to people, and not sort of be designated to a 10 table section where you're just in the weeds and it's just every single thing is over and over and over again. Every single sort of conversation you have with guests can be completely different. And we really focused on a lot of personality. We didn't really hire a ton of career industry people right off the bat because I feel like with a lot of career industry people comes with a lot of sort of egos and a lot of habits. And we really wanted to sort of create this new experience for everybody, whether it was staff and customers alike. This is a lot of people's first restaurant jobs in here, and especially in a self-pour aspect as well. So being able to hire great people with great personalities, people who like to have fun, people who are hardworking and driven and sort of are very proactive and sort of look to sort of engage with customers versus just the, hi, I'm here, I'm going to be your server today, let me take your order, what can I get you to drink kind of thing. It gives a lot of flexibility to these guys, which I think they enjoy. It's totally different than working in a traditional setting, and I feel like they find they have a little bit more fun with it while they're here.
Yeah, we talked about this last week, Connor, before as we were prepping for this. I just love the idea of being hiring people that you can mold into your location rather than bringing in people with all this experience. With experience come bad habits in a lot of cases, not with everybody, of course.
Sometimes, yeah.
But and it's a lot easier to, get everybody engaged and excited in the process and what you are presenting when you are hiring somebody that's a little bit more green, somebody that needs a little bit more mold that they're able to mold into what you're trying to present. So you're also presenting a consistent experience across all aspects and all employees to be at that for that matter. Um, we had a couple questions. I'm going to backtrack a little bit. Rachel, talking about the tap walls specifically. Um, talk to those watching at home that aren't as experienced with it, and then Connor, I'll get your opinion on this as well, about managing those taps and having to actually maintain them, and utilizing them on a regular basis. So the question comes to Dana, never manage taps. Do they require daily cleaning or maintenance? And then do you have these you talked about a lot of different venues that these self-pour tap rooms are going into. Do you see them going into a lot of venues that don't offer food? They're specifically just for the tap rooms themselves or the tap walls themselves. Hotels came up as an example. But yeah, talk to us about a little bit about that, and then Connor, I want to get your take on how that's been working out for you at Hop and Vine as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So as far as the maintenance of the taps, think of it like a traditional, tap wall as a standard tap wall. You want to get those cleaned, every 2 weeks. In different states and things like that have different regulations around that, but you will want to clean them. So not necessarily daily. Of course, there's like daily maintenance things that you can do, tap stoppers and things like that to keep them clean. And Connor can probably touch on that for what he does at Hop and Vine. So, there is a daily maintenance, but you don't have to clean the lines and run the lines daily. I think that Pour My Beer does something really well where we definitely set you up for success from start to finish. We offer draft equipment, and whether you choose to use our draft equipment or not, we have somebody that's in there that kind of walks you through the process from start to finish, from installing a cooler, installing that draft equipment, to then moving on to the tech and things like that. So certainly, want to set you up for success when it comes to the draft equipment itself, as I understand that can be a little bit scary. The second part of that question, I think, was, not serving food. Absolutely. We have several locations that just have a tap wall that don't serve food. They'll do I think one has a popcorn machine. Other one does like some small bites and stuff, but we've certainly seen this implemented to where it's just a tap wall, no food. And it works very well. Some of those locations will have like food trucks on site, or they'll have like a celebrity guest, chef that comes in, things like that to, spice it up for events and stuff like that. And especially, with hotels, certainly wouldn't have to have, a food model. I think that's where, a built-in wall or a self-pour station is fantastic, particularly the stations, because there's zero construction. There's no plumbing required. You can move them around the hotel for different events and things like that. Not as daunting when it comes to, cleaning and installing and things like that.
And then, yeah, Connor, at Hop and Vine, how has just you guys have been running for, almost 6 months now. How has that experience been with the tap wall? Do you find it to be a different type of maintenance from your full bar, which is nice? You have the flexibility, you have both situations at hand, and you have to manage both.
Yeah.
You feel like it's more work, or do you feel like it's either less work, or just basically the same?
No, I think it's pretty much the same, to be quite honest. I mean, daily maintenance goes into every bar, every restaurant. That's kind of a part of it there. That so you're constantly cleaning grates out, drip trays, wiping things down. We do the tap stoppers at the end of every night, so you avoid things like fruit flies and stuff like that. And then we follow state regulations that allow us to clear in the whole lines every 2 weeks that are there. So those lines are constantly being flushed. And I don't really see, from a cleaning perspective, anything more than sort of what a traditional bar or restaurant does.
Great. And so, Connor, you walked us through the flow of when a guest comes in. They do the check-in, they are providing their credit card and associating it with those passes, or those RFID cards, to be used. You guys are using GoTab, so obviously I'm a little bit more
Yep.
familiar with the capabilities there. You have multiple people coming in at any one time. You're providing each individual person with their own card, so they can go up and down to the tap wall, go to the bar, order from the bartender, as in addition to placing their own orders on their phone through either the QR codes or through the easy tab flow as well, which provides this is the heart of the optionality of the hybrid service model, right? Where you're
Yeah.
allowing your guests to multiple options, multiple ways of placing orders, and being provided service. And they get to choose. I always say it's a choose your own adventure type of situation. If everybody remembers those books from when you were kids, or maybe you still read them now, that's fine. Where you get to choose as a guest, like, hey, I don't want to order something from my phone. I want to order from a person, a human being. That's great. And you have all of the staff that are ready to go, and provide them with that opportunity, utilizing the RFID cards at the bar to pull up their tab. So there's no miscommunication about what tab that they're putting it on, and having multiple people on the same tab without having to open up a whole bunch of tabs per person, obviously goes a long way. And the introduction of those RFID cards from one centralized location, but you can still provide those cards from the bar or from anywhere you have a point of sale, in the restaurant as well.
Hmm.
And this question came up about what kind of information do you need to activate one of these cards? And I'll just take that directly. It's you're activating this card at the point of sale in the same motion that you are starting the tab. So the information that you need is simply the card to be on file. And then you can associate phone numbers with the RFIDs as well, so that can activate different communication factors within the system as well. Are you utilizing any kind of communication methods within your within Hop and Vine to communicate status of orders or things of that nature right now, Connor?
Yeah, so kind of to answer that question a little bit, like when you walk up to that hostess in and start that tab, the hostess is there to sort of explain that whole experience that's there, whether there are, limits to each tap wall card that's there. There's state mandated checkpoints that allow customers to sort of get cut off and, 32 ounces of beer, 10 ounces of wine for Connecticut. And so when you hit those limits, a little pop-up will show up on those screens. And basically our little message says like, oh, it seems like you're having a great time. Like, please find a staff member to reload your card. And staff is there to immediately sort of tap their card, reload their card. It's sort of a built-in sobriety checkpoint that's there because everybody is pouring their own glasses of wine, their own IPAs and sours and beers and all that kind of stuff that's there. So, that is explained in there. The QR code is explained. And then to your point, the Easy Tab functionality of GoTab allows the customers, if they wanted to punch in their cell phone number, to essentially link that QR code to that tap wall that's there. And you can create and you can combine those two tabs together. We have handhelds for customers, for staff to kind of walk around and touch tables with and sort of say, oh, maybe you're not super interested in the QR code system. You'll have my staff being able to walk around and be able to take those orders manually, like a traditional sort of setting, or you can walk up to the bar or the hostess in yourself and sort of order that way. To your point, there is plenty of functionality aspects of things so that you can kind of create your own experience while you're here.
Yeah, I love again that idea that you can choose your own adventure and kind of choose where you want to go with that as well. A lot of questions, obviously, about the functionality of the self-service, and that is definitely a part of the hybrid model, is providing this opportunity to create a new experience throughout. What I want to touch on really quick before we get back into that is get back into the idea of your staffing levels and the choices that you're able to make with this kind of a model. Have you found that because everybody has a more of a flexible method of service, that you've run into less opportunity? This is something I always ran into. You have a server call out, or well, I don't have another server that's ready to go. So now I'm running short staffed because now I have to spread out all the sections to, the 4 other servers that are on. Now they have, an extra table, maybe an extra 10 seats in their sections. That is going to bring down service. Do you feel as though this model has allowed you more flexibility to change where the role is, and then how are you also divvying up tips? How, because that is a big, obviously, part of one, having a job, and then also working in the service industry in general, is how are you making, what am I walking out with as a, service provider, server, bartender, food runner, what have you? What kind of model are you creating to monetarily incentivize your staff to stick around?
Yeah, so kind of what I touched on a little bit before, being able to allow a little bit of a smaller staff to run around this place and not sort of be assigned to a 10 table section allows the flexibility to, put people in different roles or multiple roles throughout the evening, and sort of say, okay, cool, if this area here is a little bit quieter, be sure to go over here and touch base over there if that's a little bit more, a little bit busier. Or, hey, I need an extra hand running food really quickly, and maybe downstairs is not as busy as what upstairs is. That person who is monitoring that tap wall downstairs has the flexibility to, go grab some hands and grab some plates and run a little bit of food. Where, I find that in the past where I've worked in traditional settings there, you have a food runner, you have a server kind of call out, and all of a sudden your 6 table sections are turning into 8, 9, 10 table sections, and all of a sudden that level of service drastically drops. And we're nice in that sort of sense, where the staff and the team itself is a little bit smaller. It's a little bit more of a close knit staff. Everyone really works very well together. And we pool house here because it is one sort of homogenous team that's here. So like, you don't have these sections. The bartender doesn't have their designated role, and you're only going to be there. The bartender, comes out from behind that bar and will, bust tables, will help people reload cards at the tap walls, anything sort of along those lines. So they work very well together across the whole team to create this amazing experience for every guest that walks into Hop and Vine.
Yeah, I just love the idea of creating this team mentality, and it's easier said than done, right? And when you kind of set those standards in advance during your hiring process, during your training process, and everybody kind of understands that the role that they play, you're setting those expectations from the start, and it's a lot easier to keep people and staff engaged in just continuing to provide that level of service that you're setting those expectations when you do set those expectations from the get-go. So it's nice that you're able to kind of do that and continue with that. Rachel, the idea of when we've talked about how, especially with the self-pour tap rooms, the ability to provide the connectivity of the RFID cards to, the point of sale and kind of keeping all that together. What kind of optionality have you run into where, when people do want to pay up for this and they're done with their experience, what kind of optionality have you seen at at the PourMyBeer locations for people to kind of settle up and choose when they want to close out?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the most obvious thing is that, they could just leave, right, without talking to anyone, and they have a card on file, and they're closed out automatically. And some locations, will have it say, hey, if you walk out, it's automatic 20% gratuity added on. Some don't. You have that flexibility. But I think to be obvious, like that's a great, plus for a guest. I've also seen several locations have boxes and buckets that they can drop their cards in, which is what I suggest doing, that have different tip percentages on there, 15, 18, 20. Some of them don't have tips, but again, just giving kind of that option for people to just not necessarily check out with somebody and just drop their card and go, because you've already, again, started the tab with your card when you walked in, so your card's on file, so there's no risk of walking out and not paying. Another option is prepaid. So let's say, you had maybe a party coming in or something like that. You could prepay for, 10, 20 cards, put, $25, $50 on there. And that prepaid card amount, you can then use at the tabs until it runs out. Once it runs out, if you want to start a tab on that card and keep it going, that's fantastic. If you don't, that's okay too, right? So I think just adding flexibility in there as well. And then touching back, on the QR payment as well. QR option is another possibility if you didn't want to do RFID. And QR is fantastic. We have a great integration with GoTab to where you could utilize that QR code that's in your GoTab app that you're, kind of scanning and paying, to then go up to the wall and scan, your phone with your QR code on there to pour a product. I think that this works amazing for membership settings. So like country clubs or like pickleball places that have memberships, you can have a QR code that just kind of lives in your phone that acts as your ID, your pass up at the wall to pour product.
Yeah, you touched on so many good things. The fact that all these gears started in my head, obviously, as the rep here from GoTab, as you talk about memberships, and we have a membership model built into GoTab that you can create, recurring memberships and loyalty programs that are associated with that. And you can associate that with the person, with the phone number as well. And then the whole idea of paying on your phone, that adds to the optionality throughout their experience. I keep using that word, and I promised a lot of people I would, because it's absolutely true. And actually, I got some flack from my wife saying that that's not a real word. No, it absolutely is a real word. It's just the idea of being able to provide as many options as possible, not only to the operators of how they want to present their service, but also how they want to present the experience to the guest. And the idea of having to settle up your check in general is something you don't think about until it happens, and then nobody actually wants to do it, right? And so, Rachel, you talked about the idea that, yeah, you can just walk out. That's a great experience. You're like, oh, cool. I'm already paid up. It's cool. I get a great time. I don't want the last memory I have of my experience there of me giving somebody money. It's like it just happens in the background. And then obviously you still have the option of going up to Connor. And I wanted to get your take on like how often these three ways happen. People walking out and having their tab closed out automatically, people coming back up to the bar or the point of sale and closing out manually, versus opening up their phone, looking at their tab because everything's broken up. Everything in GoTab on the receipt page is broken up, not only the ounces and the items that are being poured from the tap wall and the amount that they're spending, but also all the items that they ordered directly from a server or from a bartender. They're all broken out so you can see who ordered it. Like anybody, if you have five people in your party, all five people's orders are all separated out. So it's really easy to go in there, pay for your own items. You can split their items and all that, and you can manually close out. And so you have a little bit more control over, yeah, whatever that gratuity that you want to add on there. If you want to add more than the default that, whatever counter you have set up there, you have that ability to do so. And then the other option is obviously to walk out and let it all happen naturally. What percentage of guests do you see picking each one of those three buckets?
So we have three sort of tip buckets. They're almost like little like key card drop boxes that are at the bottom of our front staircase that's there, that's in that sort of lobby area when you first walk in. To be quite honest, find the majority of people drop those cards right into those buckets. We kind of explain to people the idea is that you haven't waited for a drink all night, so like why wait to close your tab out? Just drop it right in the bucket, walk right out the door, go catch your train, go catch a show, go catch dinner if are late for a dinner reservation. You don't have to sort of wait to go and check in with the hostess or the bar and pay the old-fashioned way. But if you feel as though that you're more comfortable doing that, that option's there for you. And GoTab is really nice in the sense where, being able to use the QR code and starting those tabs originally right from GoTab, you can just close out right on the phone. Say you were to forget your card and put it in your pocket and walk out, kind of like the way that Rachel says, 2 hours down the road, you can go back into that same tab and just, punch close tab out on the GoTab um, phone that's right there. That whole account, the options are really endless, but I find the majority of people really kind of drop those key cards right into those drop boxes that are there and walk right out the door. They find it super convenient, very easy to use. Yeah, I don't just,
I also like
it's an amazing way.
I'd like to point out too that on the screens themselves, you can see what your tab is at, at the wall. So, each pour, you're seeing how many ounces you're pouring and how much, per ounce that's costing you. But as you go back and continue to use it throughout the night, you'll see your total amount. So I don't think there's any surprises at the end, like, wow, I spent how much, because you're seeing it, at the wall in real time and able to kind of like manage your tab that way as well.
Yeah, I'm not surprised to hear Connor you say that, more often than not, they're just dropping them in those buckets and then walking out because that's exactly what I would do.
Yeah.
Um, I don't like the idea of like in a traditional model, you're sitting at the table and you're waiting for somebody to come over to ask if you're done. Yes, we're done. Drop the check. Now they have to come back and pick up your card, swipe your card, all that good stuff.
Right.
Now, not only from a guest perspective, now I feel handcuffed to waiting for the server to come back over with my check, but also now you as an operator are waiting for that table to turn over so that you can get more guests in here and get a new experience involved as well. Um,
God, God forbid the server is out rolling, rolling silverware in the back, or starting to do some side work or anything like that. You're looking around, constantly trying to put your hand up over there. It's just being able to just drop your cards in those buckets and walk out the door is super convenient for everybody. And it seems to be very well received from us.
Right. Yeah, and the idea too that I go back to this whole choose your own adventure idea, and it's something that I was taught a long time ago that I've utilized with every restaurant I've ever worked at, is that there are different types of people that walk into your establishment. I always say there's people that want to play, there's people that want to watch, and there's people that want nothing to do with you. Maybe they were dragged in there with their friends and they're just here because they have to be. And it's up to you as a service provider to recognize which one of those buckets they fit in and then be able to adjust your service model to who they are rather than trying to force them to change who they are as a person. And so the fact that you're able to provide all this different optionality, and there's that word again, throughout the experience is key. I'm going to kind of close up here and talk some numbers and what have you. Connor, specifically about, key numbers that revolve around utilizing this kind of model when it hits on labor costs and being able to increase check sizes as well. I think we talked about it briefly earlier, Rachel, with the idea that you're able to, at the self pour walls, you actually see averages go up because they have the optionality of being able to try a whole bunch of different stuff, and you're able to kind of change what you're looking for. But Connor, how have you seen this model impacting the numbers that you're obviously, as an operator, the most ingrained in?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of nice being able to sort of have this physical card in hand when you're moving throughout the space. It's almost, we talk a little bit, it's almost like playing around with casino money a little bit and having these sort of poker chips in hand, and you don't necessarily, you're not really thinking about it all the time. You're just sort of going to tap wall, and it's, you're pouring a little sample here, and that's $2 there, and you're sampling this over here, and that's $4 there, and you're not necessarily looking at the menu and you're seeing this price gouge of like, oh, this is $9, this is $8, this is $15. You're creating your own experience and not sort of being tied to what everything is priced at. Uh, we find that staffing, being able to cut a little bit of staff has been huge for us. Tips then are then transferred over to these guys. They make great money because of it. And that's helped us with retention. The staff who's here, they love being here. They make great money for what it is. And you're not sort of in this 10 table section where you're in the weeds and you're constantly sweating. It's, very much a fun, laid back, relaxed sort of atmosphere where you can be yourself, have some personality, and still get, a really good paycheck at the end of the week.
Yeah, I think that a lot of focus when it comes to like labor costs really focuses on just the idea of, I want to cut as many as many bodies on the floor as possible. But one of the biggest aspects of labor cost is retention. And you just touched on that right there. It costs a lot more money to hire and train constantly than it does to just keep the right people at the right time and then kind of spread the wealth throughout the course of the week or the month or the year based on business rather than based on your actual staffing levels. So I love the fact that is you've been able to bring in people that you can continue to retain them and not have to spend that added cost to rehire and retrain, and then also not only money for labor costs but time and energy and
Yeah.
on your part to actually going off and posting those jobs and actually interviewing and just that whole process. So it's glad to hear that you're probably not going through that as often as you could be.
Definitely.
We had I mean the numbers are all great and important. It's also very transparent in the way in which the tab is being presented to your guests. I kind of touched on that earlier, where you're seeing everything. And there was a question earlier too about, how are all the tabs connected? And like the idea is that it's just one tab, and like all your food, your orders from your bar, the orders from the tap wall are all connected to the same tab. And it's all visible in that way. So that's again, it gives a little bit more transparency, not only from a cost perspective from the operator for you, Connor, but also from the guest perspective as well. I think I want to give you guys a 2-second window to kind of sum things up the way you kind of see this model working. Any added benefits that I didn't ask you guys directly. Rachel, any closing thoughts you have on this model that I think are worth sharing?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that it's such a diverse model, right? Depending on your venue space, for like a built-in wall in a brick and mortar location or a food hall or something like that. I think it's absolutely, it's convenience and it's experience, and it's adding to the overall just the concept, right? And then I think you have instances where this is absolutely like a convenience, and it's like getting people through and moving them to their destination. So I think it serves a purpose in so many different locations. And I could, go on and on about the tech. I really do think that it's very powerful. It's, it's very user friendly. It gives you a lot of data and reporting on the back end, something that we didn't really touch on, keg level management. It makes inventory so much easier. You can hook up a keg, you can set the keg level on there. So at the end of the week or, the month or whenever you do your inventory, everything is really laid out for you. So I think that it's, we've tried to make this tech as friendly as possible for the guests, but also as easy to use and powerful for the operators as well.
Yeah, and then Connor, like the idea that you chose to start off with this model and obviously kept going with it so strongly, touch on a little bit about like more about why you chose the model and why you're going to continue to go with it.
Yeah, kind of to Rachel's point, we sort of look at these self-pour systems as sort of like the new analytics to what baseball was, several years back. This is sort of the
Nice
new
baseball
the new
reference.
wave in this restaurant industry. To her point, we can see in the back of house, minute by minute, second by second, what beers are being poured, how often taps are being poured, what styles are being poured more often than others, so that we can adjust our taps and say, oh, maybe we have two ciders. I mean, to be quite honest, we started with two cider taps because it was, oh, we're opening in January, we'll do a little bit of fall and like not a big deal. And then we came to quickly realize that like people were drinking cider hand over fist, all year round. And now we run 4 or 5 cider lines constantly because that's just what we, people are drinking. And you may or may not see that in traditional settings, but to have analytics and numbers back it up on a day-to-day basis through like all of that reporting in there is huge. And then for us on like the front of house side of things, like, you kind of said it best. You really can create your own adventure in this space here. It's not just sort of tied to one specific experience that a traditional restaurant will, where, you're coming in, you're stuck at this specific table, you're choosing these 2 or 3 different things that you eat from the menu every time, you're getting the same cocktail you do every time, and you're there to sort of hang out and then leave. You can have groups of ladies who want to come in and do wine night. You can have a bunch of friends come in to watch the big game. You can come in to just play darts and play shuffleboard and hang out. You can come in for dinner. You can genuinely come in here 4, 5, 6, 7 times and have a totally different experience and totally unique experience every single time. That with the sort of rotating aspect of all the taps, our beers are constantly changing, where you could walk into Hop and Vine on a Monday and then walk back in on Thursday or Friday, and the entire tap wall can be totally different. We don't like to keep our taps stagnant. We like to sort of showcase a lot of that hard work that these guys are doing. And so it caters to the craft beer nerds, but the experience and the ambiance and the vibe that's in here kind of caters to everybody and creates a cool, fun experience for everybody across the board. It's great.
Yeah, I love that aspect. And I know I keep using the term optionality, but I think the word experience right here is really kind of sums it up. Going out to eat in any capacity is more than just going out to get some really good food. That's definitely part of it, but it's part of the experience and the overall experience that you're able to provide utilizing whatever you are presenting. Obviously, the 69 tabs that you have at Hop and Vine is kind of the centerpiece, right? It's like that's what you're focusing on, but you've created the focus, you've given an experience that a guest can go through to remember that by as well. Not only did they enjoy the product in which you are presenting, but they got to be part of it. So I think that's the biggest aspect of that to kind of take away as well is whatever experience you can provide on top of the product that you're also pushing to your guests, that goes a long way.
Definitely.
All right. I think that is I think that's gonna sum it up for us as we kind of conclude this discussion over the hybrid service model. For more information, of course, you can reach directly out to us, and we can, put you in touch with everybody that's on this call. If you guys are watching at home, or at work or wherever, I want to just appreciate the fact that you are able to take out as much time as you could from in the middle of your Wednesday to join us for this. And we'll make all this information more readily available through direct communication, of course. But yeah, Rachel, Connor, thank you so much for joining us. And yeah, cheers.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Thanks for
Absolutely.
having
Thanks
me,
for
Adam.
having us.
Thanks.